decorated Marine walks into a public ceremony carrying scars no one bothers to understand. Laughter follows her. Mockery cuts deeper than shrapnel ever did. But when the highest, ranking officer on the base notices those scars, really sees them, the air changes. What unfolds next is a moment of reckoning no one there will ever forget. Before we begin, where are you watching from today? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. And if you're here for stories that honor silent strength, unseen sacrifice, and moral justice, please subscribe before we begin. Now let's begin. The laughter came first. It cut through the morning air like something sharp and careless, echoing off the pale concrete of the parade ground. A few Marines near the back didn't even bother to lower their voices. Their amusement was easy, unguarded, cruel in the way only boredom and youth can be. They were laughing at her arms. She stood alone near the edge of the formation, shoulders square, boots planted with disciplined stillness. The sun caught the pale, uneven skin running along her forearms, thick ridges and jagged lines that twisted like old, angry rivers beneath the surface. Burned scars. Shrapnel scars. Skin that had been torn, stitched, torn again, and forced to heal in a place where mercy had never existed. Someone muttered that it looked like she'd lost a fight with a fire. Someone else snorted and said she probably shouldn't be wearing short sleeves on base. Another voice, too loud, too bold, wondered if she was even supposed to be there. She heard all of it. Captain Elena Marrow did not react. Her face remained still, composed into the neutral calm the corpse had carved into her years ago. Her breathing stayed even. Her eyes remained forward, fixed somewhere beyond the flagpole. Beyond the murmuring ranks, beyond the easy cruelty of people who had never bled for the uniform they wore. Inside her chest, something old tightened, but it did not break. Because this was not the first time. Elena did not look like the heroes painted on recruitment posters. She was smaller than most of the Marines around her, her frame lean and compact rather than imposing. Her hair was pulled back with precise restraint, streaked faintly with silver that hadn't been there before the war. Her face carried a stillness that made her seem older than her years, not aged, but settled, as if she had already seen the worst and survived it. The scars were impossible to ignore. They climbed from her wrists to her elbows in uneven patterns, some pale and smooth, others dark and raised, catching the light no matter how she turned. They were not decorative. They were not symmetrical. They told no story anyone wanted to hear quickly. A few Marines glanced at her rank and then back at her arms, confusion flickering across their faces. Captain. That didn't fit the joke they were building in their heads. The ceremony was supposed to be routine. A visiting general. A handful of commendations. A speech about honor and readiness. Nothing anyone would remember by dinner. Except Elena already knew she would. Because humiliation had a way of lingering. Before the scars, before the whispers, Elena Marrow had been a name spoken with respect in places that no longer existed on any map. She had enlisted at 19, carrying grief like a second rucksack. Her father had died quietly, years after his own service. The kind of veteran whose stories came out only late at night and never finished cleanly. Her mother had taught her resilience with tired hands and unspoken pride. Elena had chosen the Marines because they promised clarity, structure, purpose. She excelled quickly, not loudly, but consistently. She learned to listen before she spoke, to move without wasting energy, to notice details others missed. She became the one others leaned on in the field, the calm presence when radios failed and plans collapsed. Her first deployment smelled like dust and diesel fuel. Her second smelled like smoke that never left her clothes. By her third, the scent of blood felt ordinary enough that it frightened her more than the firefights. The scars came on a night when the air itself seemed to burn. An IED had detonated beneath a convoy vehicle ahead of hers, flipping it like a toy. She remembered heat first, blinding, consuming, and then the sound of screaming that didn't register as human until she realized it was her own. She had pulled 2 Marines from the wreckage before the secondary explosion. She had covered one with her body when shrapnel tore through the air. She had stayed conscious long enough to give orders, to press her hands against wounds that refused to close, to keep others alive while her own skin peeled and split. When she woke days later, her arms were wrapped in white, and the doctors spoke softly, as if volume itself might hurt her. "You're lucky," one had said. Elena had stared at the ceiling and wondered what kind of luck demanded that price. She lost friends that night. Names that never left her thoughts. Faces that still visited her in dreams when the world went quiet. And yet, she stayed. Because some people carry survival not as a gift, but as a responsibility. Back on the parade ground, the ceremony continued. The general had not yet arrived. The Marines shifted subtly, boots scraping concrete, shoulders rolling with restrained impatience. The laughter faded into whispers, but the glances continued. Elena could feel them like pressure against her skin. She remembered other moments like this, airports, civilian hospitals, even once at a children's fundraiser where someone had asked, with genuine curiosity, if she'd been in an accident. She had learned that silence unnerved people more than anger ever could. Still, there was something about being mocked by her own that cut deeper. These were Marines. They wore the same eagle, globe, and anchor. They recited the same values: honor, courage, commitment. And yet, here she stood, reduced to spectacle by those who had not yet learned what the uniform could cost. No one corrected them. No one stepped forward. The silence of bystanders grew heavy, a shared cowardice that pressed down on the moment. Even those who recognized her name, who knew her record, said nothing, perhaps assuming someone else would intervene. Elena adjusted her stance by a fraction, redistributing her weight. The scars pulled slightly, a familiar tightness reminding her of nights spent in physical therapy, biting down on pain so others wouldn't see. She did not hide her arms. She never had. Near the reviewing stand, a man in a dark uniform paused. General Thomas Alder had arrived without announcement. His presence registered first not by rank but by stillness. He stood apart from his aides, eyes scanning the formation with the practiced awareness of someone who had commanded under fire. He noticed discipline immediately. Sloppiness irritated him. So did cruelty. His gaze moved across faces, posture, alignment, then stopped. Not on the laughter. On the scars. For a moment the world seemed to slow around him. He took a single step closer to the edge of the formation, eyes narrowing, not in anger, but in focus. His attention fixed on the quiet captain standing alone, arms bare beneath the morning sun. Something about the scars struck him as wrong. Not wrong in appearance, but wrong in context. They were not the marks of recklessness, not the result of carelessness. They were too deliberate, too familiar. He had seen wounds like those before, on men who never came home. The ceremony resumed as planned. An officer began speaking, words about tradition and excellence flowing easily, practiced and empty. The Marines stood at attention, the earlier laughter replaced by disciplined stillness. But tension coiled beneath the surface. Elena felt it. She always did. Her thoughts drifted briefly, to the night of the explosion, to the heat, to the way the air itself had seemed to scream. She remembered gripping another Marine's hand as the medevac arrived, whispering reassurances she wasn't sure she believed. She remembered promising herself that if she survived, she would never flinch from being seen. The speaker droned on. General Alder did not take his eyes off her. He watched the way she held herself, not rigid but grounded. He noticed the subtle stiffness in her shoulders, the unconscious protection of someone who had learned pain deeply. He saw the scars not as disfigurement, but as documentation. When the time came for recognition of distinguished service, he stepped forward unexpectedly. The officer faltered, surprised. The general raised a hand, not sharply, just enough to pause the proceedings. The air thickened. Every Marine felt it. General Alder walked toward the formation. His boots struck the concrete with measured certainty, each step deliberate. Conversations died instantly. Even the wind seemed to still. He stopped directly in front of Captain Elena Marrow. She did not move, did not salute, did not shrink. She met his gaze with steady respect, her expression unreadable. For a long moment the general said nothing. Then, quietly, so quietly that it forced everyone to listen, he spoke. "Captain," he said, his voice carrying without effort, "how did you earn these?" The question was not accusatory. It was reverent. Elena swallowed once. "In service, sir." She did not elaborate. She did not need to. General Alder's eyes traced the scars again, slower now. Recognition settled into his features, not surprise, but understanding edged with something colder. He turned, slowly, to face the formation. "You see scars," he said. "I see a battlefield." No one breathed. "These are not imperfections," he continued. "They are evidence." His gaze sharpened, sweeping over the Marines who had laughed earlier. They stood frozen now, shame blooming visibly in their posture. Evidence of someone who stood where others fell. Evidence of someone who stayed when leaving would have been easier. He paused, letting the words sink deep. Then came the line that would echo long after the ceremony ended. Honor doesn't always look heroic, the general said. Sometimes it looks like survival. He turned back to Elena. Captain Marrow led the extraction of 3 wounded Marines under direct fire, he said. She shielded another with her own body. She refused evacuation until every member of her unit was accounted for. A ripple moved through the formation, not sound, but awareness. She was awarded the Silver Star. The general added, his voice steady. And she wears those scars so the rest of us don't have to. The general saluted her. The motion was crisp, absolute. Elena returned it, her hand steady despite the sudden burn behind her eyes. The Marines followed suit, the salute rippling outward like a wave, sharp, unified, humbled. No one laughed now. No one looked away. The silence that followed was not complicit, it was reverent. The ceremony concluded differently than planned. There were no jokes afterward. No whispers. Marines approached Elena quietly, offering nods, murmured apologies, respect earned too late but given sincerely. She accepted them without bitterness. Because bitterness weighed more than scars ever could. As the crowd dispersed, General Alders stopped beside her once more. You didn't need me, he said quietly. Elena considered that. Maybe not, she replied. But they did. He nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. Some battles are loud. Others are fought in silence, on parade grounds and hospital rooms, in moments where dignity is the only shield left. Captain Elena Marrow did not raise her voice. She did not demand recognition. She stood, scarred, unhidden, unbroken. And in doing so, she reminded everyone watching of a truth too often forgotten. Respect isn't owed to perfection, it's owed to sacrifice. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Comment below where you're watching from, and what this story made you feel. And subscribe for more stories that honor the silent heroes among us.